Hello everybody and welcome back to the Maniacal Mini. Today we are working on Yndrasta from the Dominion box set. This will be one of my longest videos that I've ever put out. I am testing out a new tutorial style. We are just going to be slowing things down a little bit, and we are going to be focusing a lot more on detail work as well as making sure that we get the proper tutorial techniques across. As far as this, what we're doing now, the Gladius Bronze, we are going to do multiple coats of this because we know we're not going to get a complete coverage on the first coat of this. I did start the model off with the zenithal highlight from the top. That is my standard. I love doing it. It brings out so many details and helps me plan out what I'm going to do next. So we are going to leave a couple of pieces in here that are not going to be painted with this bronze. That's going to be the twin-tailed comet on her headpiece, as well as the shoulder pauldron and the leg pauldron, and just a couple other bits and bobs here and there. So sit back and enjoy. If you do enjoy, please like, comment, reach out. I love interacting with you guys. So just let me know if you enjoy this new tutorial style. If you don't, just any kind of feedback would be much appreciated. So let's get started. Something else to keep in mind here with your brush strokes is never try and put too much paint on. It can very easily ruin a model very quickly. I learned that the hard way starting out. Now I just take my time. I enjoy the process of it. So if you're the type of person that likes to get their things done as quickly as possible, there is, contrast paints, inks out there. But if you want to sit down, enjoy the process, take your time, throw on a video or a movie or some music or, whatever you need to do to just sit and enjoy the process, because it is time consuming. I will say that right now, especially for what we're trying to accomplish with this particular piece. We want that bronze to just pop. We want it to be solid. We don't want to see brush strokes or anything crazy like that. So we're just going to keep going through here, and I believe we're going to start our next step in just a second. So for our second step here, we are going to bring in a little bit of Caesar Red. This is a part of Green Stuff World's metallic selection. It does come off a little bit like a rose gold, which is fine. It's not quite the color that we want for this, so we're going to be coming back in a later step to kind of deepen this red a little bit, but we're just taking our time here, going in nice thin coats. We are going to probably need about 2 or 3 to cover all these pieces here. So we're just going to sit back, relax, and pour through it. I will say too, try and be a little neat when you're getting close to, let's say, the twin-tail comet on her shoulder here, and just any of the pieces that we went over in that bronze. We went over in a lot of coats, so it's going to be a lot easier to cover it up, but in the sake of neatness and time-consuming activities, we kind of want to avoid trying to have to re-clean everything after we do it. So just take this step a little bit lighter, take your time with it, try not to be messy, clean up if you need to. The easiest part is we haven't done shades yet, we haven't done any layering, so it's very easy to touch up if you need to, and we will continue on with this step. I do want to point out, I will say, make sure you have a really good eye for these pieces, especially around the leg and around the braces on the arms. They do have some weird curves that kind of match up and kind of mesh with the leg armor, so it's a little hard to tell where that decorative pauldron would be on her leg piece and where the bronze armor would start. So try and use your best judgment to try and make it look like it's 2 separate pieces, but that's about it for this step. Okay, so we're going to be bringing in anthrax metal. This is another metallic from Green Stuff World. We're going to be hitting that chainmail skirt as well as the chain underneath her pauldron, and this is going to serve as the metallic for our blades, the one on her spear as well as the one on her sword. And another one, same thing with this one, just be nice and neat, take your time. You might need a couple coats, that's fine. We are here to enjoy the process, so I'll catch up with you guys in a minute. Also going to be using that metal just to pick out her belt buckle that's around her belt here. This is a little later on in the video, so as you can see, some more steps have been done, but I just wanted to come back. Alright, moving into shading here. This is the step we're going to start darkening down all of that red. So we're going to bring in Blood Angel's contrast paint. This is thinned down 1-to-1 with a little bit of water, and we're just going to be very neatly coating all of the red that we did earlier to give it this nice, rich, deep, dark red. Just be really careful not to hit the bronze because this contrast paint will stain it very easily, and you will start to see all those little red contrast paint marks all over your nice bronze armor. So just make sure you go through nice and easy with this step, nice and light. Don't go with too many coats, don't go too thick, just take your time, enjoy it, and we'll move on to the next step in a second. I just want to point out real quick, I have heard before and been asked about shading when we do the grimdark style. I don't usually do it only because the enamels and stuff that we use to create the effects that we want to create add their own little shading and just a little bit of tint to everything. So shading can get washed out occasionally. That's why I usually don't do it. This is more of a centerpiece model for me. So when it comes to, you know, more in-your-face kind of models, I do like to take a little bit more steps and a little bit more things that I normally wouldn't do to create the things that I do. So shading you won't see in every single one of my videos, but for this piece in particular, I thought that it was very important, especially for, you know, all the accents on her armor to get the bronze look that we're looking for. We definitely want to go through and make sure that all of those are in the right spot. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so now we are moving into a Reikland Flesh Shade wash. This is from Games Workshop. I chose to do the regular Reikland Flesh Shade over the gloss, just because I kind of want to matte down this bronze a little bit because it is looking very bright and very poppy. So I just want to bring it down just a little bit, and a little bit later on we're going to layer up over that with a different kind of bronze to get a few cool different effects and cool looks to the armor. So we're just going to come through now with regular Reikland Flesh Shade. As you move down the leg here, just be mindful of the fact that we are leaving her shoe unpainted, and we want to kind of try and leave that white that we put down earlier from our zenithal highlight over that, because it's going to play very nicely with the inks that we're going to put down earlier, because her boots will be leather, so we are going to be using a leather ink for that. So just be mindful not to try and get too much of that Reikland Flesh Shade over that part. Same thing we pointed out earlier, just along the straps here on the bracers around her wrists, there are some leather strapping. So once again, just be careful with that Reikland Flesh Shade, but try and get enough of it in there so there is a distinction. Okay, so our final shading step is going to be Nuln Oil. Once again, I did choose the regular version over the gloss version for all the metallics on her. The reason I did that, again, is because a little later on, once we get to the weathering stages, we're going to be adding a lot of corrosion and rust to all these parts. So I don't want them to be super bright and shiny. I want them to be a little bit more matted down. And this Nuln Oil, as everybody knows, Nuln Oil is godlike. So it's going to fall into all those recesses. It's going to give us a nice shadow on that chainmail. And it's going to set us up a little bit later for that corrosion and all the rust and stuff that we're going to be adding to her. Okay, so we are going to be moving into our layering phase here. This is going to be Sycorax Bronze from Games Workshop. We just want to stick to the upper ridges, the tops of the abdomen, the tops of the plate above her legs. We just want to stick to the upmost top regions of all of the bronze armor that we put down earlier. This is going to set it up, especially the Sycorax Bronze. It's a little bit paler of a bronze, so going over the top of that brighter bronze that we kind of washed out with that Reikland Flesh Shade is going to give us this nice gradient of super pale, almost worn bronze down to the almost polished, untouched areas where they wouldn't have been hit in battle yet from the last time she polished it. But you know, the higher up parts are getting nicks, they're getting dings, they're getting scratched off, so it's going to start to wear down the brightness of that bronze. So we're just going to come through now nice and light. Try and be very gentle with this step, especially now that we've added our shades to everything. We want to be careful not to hit the red accents. So for this step of layering for the red, we're not going to switch colors. We're just going to bring back in that original Caesar red, just because it was kind of that paler, almost rose gold. It's going to go really nicely over the top of everything. Should give everything a really nice gradient on the red. So just be really careful not to overdo it on this step. Just stick to the top most parts of everything. Try not to go too heavy, and we will make it into the next step soon. Okay, so for our next step, we are going to be moving on to the gems. So we are going to bring in some white scar from Games Workshop. When I do my gems, I always put down white first. It adds a nice back tone and makes them pop a little bit more once you add the technical paint over it, which is what we're going to do for this particular model. Maybe in a future video I will show hand-painted gems, but for now we're just going to go a little bit easier because I plan on doing some steps a little later on that will kind of make these not as big of a deal. If I was leaving her nice and clean, I would probably leave these and make them look a little bit better and nicer, but I'm not too worried about them since, like I said, we're going to be kind of covering them up for the most part a little later on. So nice and light here, don't put on too much paint, don't clump it up, just nice layers, thin layers, build up that white so that we can get a nice good color. So now it's time for that Soulstone Red technical paint from Games Workshop. I know they have a whole bunch of different colors in the range. I liked the red. I felt like it meshed well with this red accents that we have going on here. Like I said, it's going to get covered up later, but they look pretty. Okay, so usually I put down a flesh shade wash before I start. It usually adds a nice little tone to the face before I even start layering it, so that most of the time you can skip a layer, but I'm going to go a little old school on this one. We're going to start out with just Bugman's Glow. We're going to keep this nice and thin. We're going to need probably 1 or 2 coats just to get a nice even coverage over the entire face, and we're going to zoom in on the face and layer up in subsequent steps. I'm going to zoom in, like I said, just to give you a nice closer look of which parts I'm actually layering, just to add a little bit more life to the face. So I'm going to come in with some Pectum Flesh Wash. This is going to add some shadows and some richness to the tones of the face. We're just going to give a nice even wash all over the entire skin of just Bugman's Glow that we laid down in the previous step. It is time for some layering. So it is going to be a 50-50 mix of Bugman's Glow with Cadian Flesh Tone, and we are just going to be sticking to the top ridges of her face, so the eyebrow area, her forehead, the bridge of her nose, the cheeks, the sides of her cheeks, leading up to her ear and the side of her head there, as well as the jaw line. As you can see, we kind of set that little bit of rosiness to her cheeks with all of our steps that we laid down before that, and we're going to come through after this one with one more layering step. And for our final layer, this is for the topmost ridges of the face, and it is just going to be a pure Cadian Flesh Tone, just to add a little bit more vibrancy to the face. Okay, so hopefully you have enough left over from your zenithal highlight. You didn't have to go through anything. If you did have to fix up anything that we're going to be covering now, just use a Yndrasta. It sets a really nice tone. I still have a lot of the white left, so I will be good to lay down all of my inks. The first one I'm going to start with is a Snakebite Leather from Games Workshop. That is going to be for all the leather straps, the leather belt, the handles on the weapons, as well as any other leather that we can possibly find on the model. And we are going to be bringing in some Basilicanum Gray contrast paint. This is going to be for all of the stone structure that she's standing on. So the steps here, all the brickwork underneath, the brickwork in the back, these few random bricks that are sitting with this skull in front of the pond base that I made her. Just all those covered in a nice even coat of Basilicanum Gray. We don't want to leave too much of this because it does darken down a lot, and it will kind of give it this unnatural tone, but if it does do that, that is okay. We can fix it in the weathering steps that we are going to take a little bit later on. And for our final ink here, we are going to be bringing in a Wildwood contrast paint for this giant tree that she's standing in front of. It has some kind of like moss and stuff hanging from it. For that one, just use any kind of green, preferably more like a drab green if you're trying to come with a more realistic tone of it. But for now, we're just going to come through with that Wildwood and take care of the rest of this tree. So finally moving into our more interesting steps, our weathering phase. So this is going to be a coat of AK Interactive Streaking Grime. I will do the whole model with this. I just am doing it to show you on one of her wings here. So nice coat. I only thinned it down a little bit with mineral spirits. Otherwise it's pretty much straight out of the pot, and we're just going to coat everything very liberally, and we will start working on some further steps in a second. So now we are going to grab a Q-tip and we are going to soak it down with some mineral spirits, get it nice and wet with that mineral spirit, because we are going to be wanting to put on a lot, because we have let this set for just a second, just to kind of let it stain the white of her wings. We are going to let it sit on the model as well once we start moving into that step. So it is going to be a little bit tougher to work off. So the extra mineral spirits will help. Just remember to take your time. Don't rub too hard with the Q-tips, because you can work back down to the bare plastic almost. So just remember to keep that in mind. And lots of mineral spirits. Grab new Q-tips as you need them. Take your time with it. We are enjoying the process. So our first step for our corrosion is going to be literal corrosion texture from AK Interactive. I cannot recommend this product enough. They do have a corrosion texture from Games Workshop. It is not as good as this AK Interactive one. The coverage is perfect. It's very workable and malleable. You can clean it up very easily, and it adds just another extra step of realism that I feel like you cannot get with the Games Workshop version of corrosion. So I highly recommend it. It's a staple in my painting repertoire, so like I said, I can't recommend it enough. I went and grabbed my AK Interactive Fresh Mud Splatter. I grabbed an old brush, and what I did was I dipped the brush into the mud splatter, and then with my airbrush just splattered it and sprayed it with the airbrush to create that kind of like kicked up mud look to the skirt that she has. And now we're just going to be coming in with a mix of rusts. I'm going to start off with dark rust to set kind of the tone for the other rusts to go on top of that, but we are going to move into subsequent steps of rust from that point going into medium, and then finally very sparingly with that bright orange rust. So before I sat down to paint this model, I looked at a couple of different old bronze and brass potteries and just, you know, random bits of metal that have corroded and verdigreed over the years. And I have this turquoise oxide as well as just a traditional verdigris color. So I'm going to be using a mix of those two to get some really cool effects and some very nice variation on top of the corrosion texture that we laid down earlier, because we did lay that corrosion only on top of the bronze colors. So it'll add this really awesome effect, almost like her, you know, parts of her armor are literally corroding and rusting from her being in the swamps and fighting all these new orcs that they have. So this is the last step. I accidentally lost the footage for this step, so I wanted to kind of give you a just a breakdown of how I achieved that massive blood splatter across her wings and across her armor. So I dipped a very large dry brush, the tip of the bristles, into a mixture of coagulated blood and true blood from Green Stuff World, and with the same technique that we used for the splatter mud earlier, we're just going to spray it with the airbrush, and what it's going to do is it's almost going to tear it off the end of those bristles and splatter it across whatever we're putting it on, and that's going to give it almost like a real blood splatter effect look. And then what you can do is, while it's still wet, you can come in with the brush like I showed earlier, and you can actually, you know, manipulate it. You can move it around, you can streak it, you can, you know, add some other cool effects like some handprints and other kind of cool things with it. So while I lost the footage, I was glad that I was able to at least get this part in to give you a good understanding of how I achieved that blood effect. And that's going to be it from me, guys, for this one. Thank you so much for checking it out and bearing with me through the length of the video. If you enjoyed, do not forget to hit the like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.